The new guy had been there for 9 days. 9. He didn't know where the printer was. He didn't know which meeting room had the broken heating. He still called the finance manager by the wrong name. And he was earning $8,000 more than the woman who was training him. She found out because of a spreadsheet. Not a dramatic confrontation. Not a leaked HR document. Not some whistleblower operation involving a USB stick and a suspicious man in a trench coat. A spreadsheet. And once she saw the number, she couldn't unsee it. Because suddenly, every conversation she'd had with her manager for the last 3 years sounded different. You're doing really well. You've become so valuable to the team. We really appreciate your loyalty. All true. And somehow, all worth $8,000 less. If you've ever stayed at a company because you were told you're valuable while watching new people arrive on better salaries, this story is going to feel uncomfortably familiar. Because the strangest thing about salary isn't the number on your paycheck. It's what that number tells you about how the company sees you. And there's a very simple reason why the new guy can earn more than you. It's called the loyalty tax. But we'll come back to that. First, let's go back to the spreadsheet. Her name was Emma. Emma had been working for the company for 4 years. She wasn't a superstar. She wasn't the person giving TED Talks about productivity on LinkedIn. She was something much more dangerous to a company: reliable. If a client emailed at 4:47 on Friday, Emma answered. If somebody left the team, Emma absorbed half their workload. If the new software broke, Emma knew the workaround. When someone joined the company, Emma trained them. When someone left, Emma knew what they'd been doing. She had become the human equivalent of the save button. And every year, her manager gave her the same thing: a small raise. 3%, sometimes 4%. You're doing great. Budgets are tight. We'll revisit this next year. And she believed him. Because why wouldn't she? Then a new position opened. The company hired Daniel. Daniel had good experience. Not dramatically better than Emma's. Not some legendary industry expert. He was simply coming from another company. His starting salary was $72,000. Emma was earning $64,000. $8,000. Same department, same responsibilities. And remember, Emma was training him. She found out when someone accidentally shared a spreadsheet containing salary information. She stared at the number, $72,000. Then she looked at her own paycheck, $64,000. And something strange happened. She didn't immediately become angry. She laughed. Because sometimes your brain doesn't know what else to do. She later described it as, "I thought there had to be a mistake." So she checked. There wasn't. And this is where the story gets interesting. Because Emma had spent 4 years thinking she had a salary problem. She didn't. She had an information problem. Most people think your salary works like this. You work hard, you get better, you become more valuable, your salary goes up. Simple. But companies don't always work like that. There are often 2 completely different salary systems operating inside the same building. The first system is, what do we need to pay to hire this person? The second is, what can we get away with paying the person we already have? Those sound similar. They aren't. When a company hires someone new, it has to compete with the outside market. The candidate can say, no thanks. They can interview somewhere else. They can negotiate. They can walk away. So the company has to put a number on the table that gets them through the door. But Emma was already inside. She had rent, a routine, relationships with colleagues, knowledge of the systems, 4 years of familiarity. And most importantly, she had stopped looking. That last part matters. Because the company wasn't competing with another employer for Emma. They were competing with Emma's inertia. And inertia is cheap. This is what I call the loyalty tax. You stay. The company gets comfortable. Your salary increases slowly. The market moves faster. Then someone new arrives at the market rate, and suddenly your loyalty has a price. Except you are the one paying it. Think about it. Imagine you bought a laptop 4 years ago. You paid $1,200. 4 years later, the same company launches a new laptop for $1,600. You don't get angry because the new laptop costs more. You understand. New technology, new market, new price. But imagine the company gives the new employee the $1,600 laptop, while telling you, we really value your loyalty, so here's a $20 gift card. That's essentially what happens with salaries. Except the gift card is called an annual review. This is the part that matters. It doesn't necessarily require a villain. There doesn't have to be an evil boss sitting in a dark room whispering, how little can I pay Emma before she starts crying? Most of the time, it's much more boring than that. Budgets are divided. Raises are incremental. People are promoted at different times. Managers assume employees will tell them if they're unhappy. HR looks at salary bands. New hires come with new negotiations. And slowly, the gap appears. $500 here, $2,000 there, $5,000 over a few years. Until one day, the person who has been keeping the department alive discovers that the person they are teaching makes more money. And that's when the emotional damage begins. Because now you're not just asking, am I underpaid? You're asking, what else have I misunderstood? Emma went back through her old performance reviews. This is the part that really bothered her. Every year, the language was almost identical. Consistently exceeds expectations. Demonstrates strong ownership. Critical member of the team. Highly dependable. Ready for greater responsibility. She had collected compliments like loyalty points, but none of them had turned into money. And suddenly she understood something. Being appreciated and being compensated are two different things. Your manager can genuinely appreciate you. Your colleagues can genuinely love working with you. You can genuinely be essential to the team, and you can still be underpaid. Those things can coexist. In fact, sometimes being very useful makes you less likely to leave, which creates a strange trap. You're so valuable that everyone wants you to stay, but not valuable enough for anyone to urgently change your salary until you threaten to leave. And then suddenly, there's budget. Funny how that works. So let's do something. Think of your current job. Don't calculate your salary yet. Instead, answer 3 questions. 1. If you disappeared tomorrow, how difficult would it be to replace what you actually do? Not your job title, what you actually do. 2. When was the last time your salary was compared with the current market rate? Not when you got your last annual raise. When was the actual market comparison? 3. If you were applying for your own job today, what salary would you ask for? Don't say what you currently earn. Imagine you have never worked there. You're interviewing from the outside. What number would you put on the form? Remember it, because we're going to come back to it. Emma didn't immediately resign. She didn't storm into her manager's office and throw the spreadsheet onto the desk. She did something much more uncomfortable. She prepared. She documented what she was doing. Projects, responsibilities, results, extra work, training, problems she'd solved, revenue she'd influenced, time she'd saved, anything measurable. Then she researched comparable roles, and she stopped thinking, I deserve more because I've been here for 4 years. Instead, she asked, what is the market value of the work I'm doing? That's a completely different conversation. Because loyalty is emotional, market value is negotiable. She went into the meeting. Her manager asked, so what would you like to discuss? And she said, I'd like to talk about my compensation relative to the responsibilities I'm currently carrying. No dramatic speech, no mention of Daniel. No, I know how much the new guy makes. Because here's an important rule. Don't make your entire salary negotiation about another person's salary, even if you're right, even if it's unfair. The strongest argument is not, he makes more than me. It's, here's the value of the role I'm performing, and here's where my compensation sits relative to that value. Daniel is evidence. He isn't your argument. Her manager wasn't thrilled. He said the usual things. Budgets were tight. It wasn't the right time. There were salary bands. They'd need to speak to HR. Emma had heard all of these before. But this time she asked one question. What specifically would need to happen for my salary to reach $72,000? Notice what happened. She didn't ask, can you give me a raise? She asked for the conditions. Because vague promises are incredibly comfortable. Let's revisit this later. When budgets improve. After the next review. Once you've taken on more responsibility. These sentences can keep you waiting for years. So turn them into something measurable. What exactly? What result? What responsibility? What date? What salary? If the answer is, I can't tell you, that's information too. And here's the part nobody likes hearing. Sometimes the company will say no. Not because you're wrong, because they simply don't need to say yes. That's the difference between being valuable and having leverage. Value is, this person is good. Leverage is, this person is good and they have another option. You don't have to threaten your employer. You don't have to manufacture an offer.
But you should know what your alternatives are.
Because the moment you know you could leave, you stop negotiating from fear. You start negotiating from information. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for your salary isn't asking your manager for more money. It's finding out what another company would pay you. Now, before somebody opens LinkedIn and types, "I'm done, I'm leaving," don't. Not yet. Because there's another trap. People discover they're underpaid and immediately resign. Then they take the first offer that makes them feel wanted. That's emotional decision-making. And ironically, that's how you end up underpaid somewhere else. The goal isn't get out. The goal is know your market. There are 3 numbers you should know: your current salary, your market range, and your walkaway number. Your current salary is obvious. Your market range is what comparable employers are actually paying. Your walkaway number is the minimum that would make changing jobs worth the risk. Once you know those 3 numbers, your salary stops feeling like a mysterious number your employer invented. It becomes a decision. Now go back to the number you chose earlier, the salary you'd ask for if you were applying for your own job today. Maybe you earn $58,000, but if you were a new candidate, you'd ask for $68,000. Maybe you earn $70,000, but you'd tell a recruiter you want $85,000. Here's the uncomfortable question. Why does the new version of you deserve more than the current version of you? Is it because you're better now? More experienced? More capable? Because the market has moved? Because you've taken on more responsibility? If yes, why has your salary not moved with you? That's the conversation. Not "I want more money," but "the job has changed. The market has changed. My contribution has changed. Has my compensation kept up?" Remember Emma? She didn't leave immediately, she negotiated. The company eventually increased her salary. Not to $72,000, but enough to close most of the gap. And here's the funny part. A few months later, Daniel left. He got a better offer somewhere else. The company had to replace him. And the new person who came in? They were offered more than Daniel. Emma watched the cycle happen again. New person, new negotiation, new salary. And she finally understood the lesson. The company wasn't sitting around deciding who deserved what. It was responding to the market, which meant she had to do the same. So if the new guy earns more than you, don't immediately ask, "How could they do this to me?" Ask 3 better questions. What is the market paying for my skills? What evidence do I have that I'm performing above my current level? And what alternatives do I have if the company says no? Because the goal isn't to become angry about somebody else's salary. The goal is to stop being surprised by your own. And there's a bigger lesson here. Your employer knows what you're worth to the business. Recruiters know what you're worth on the market. Other companies know what they're willing to pay. The only person who may not know is you. And that's why the spreadsheet mattered. Not because $72,000 was some magical number. It wasn't. It was information. Before that spreadsheet, Emma had a story in her head. She thought, "I'm paid fairly." Then, maybe everyone is paid roughly the same. Then, if they valued me more, they'd tell me. The spreadsheet destroyed all 3 assumptions in about 12 seconds. And sometimes that's what information does. It doesn't change your situation immediately. It changes the way you see it. And once you see it, you can't go back. So here's the one sentence I'd want you to remember. Not a motivational quote, not a negotiation trick, just 5 words. What is this role worth today? Not 4 years ago, today. Not what your salary was when you joined, today. Not what your company thinks you're worth. What does the market say? Because your salary has a history, but your value has a present, and those 2 numbers don't always match. The next morning, Emma walked past Daniel's desk. He was still trying to figure out the printer. She smiled. He asked, "Do you know where these go?" She pointed him toward the machine. Then she went back to her desk. Same office, same people, same job. But something had changed. She no longer saw herself as the employee waiting for the company to decide what she was worth. She saw herself as someone who could find out. And that distinction is worth more than any annual review. Because maybe the new guy earns more than you. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe your company pays fairly, maybe it doesn't. But if you don't know, you're negotiating blind. So tonight, do one thing. Open a blank note. Write down your current salary. Then write down the salary you'd ask for if you were applying for your own job tomorrow. Don't make it comfortable. Make it honest. Then look at the difference. Because that gap might be nothing.
Or it might be the most expensive number you've never looked at. And if you discover that the new guy really does earn more than you, don't panic. Don't rage post on LinkedIn. And definitely don't send HR an email at 11:43 p.m. titled, "We need to talk." Just get the information. Then decide what to do with it. Because the worst part of being underpaid isn't earning less. It's spending years believing you have no choice.